In Hallertau, Uwe Rosenberg brings us to the longest producing hop region in the world. You are now the chief of a small village in the region, and the year is 1850. Although the region prides itself on being the first in Central Europe to produce hops, you are responsible for making the Hallertau region what it is today as you plant your fields, improve your goods, and play your cards right to bring prosperity to your people. Hallertau is a competitive hand management and progressive worker placement game where you will play cards and breed sheep and grow resources in order to improve your village. 1 to 4 players can play for 1 to 2 hours in this love letter of a game to Bavaria. Rosenberg designed the game, Lukas Siegmon and Klemens Franz did the artwork, and the game is published by Lookout Games. If you find this video useful, please comment and subscribe so that we can keep making videos like this one. Let's take a look at how to set up and then play the game. Set up the action board in easy reach of all players. This is where the gateway cards, farmyard cards, bonus cards, and point cards will go in the corners. Before you can place them there, you will need to do the following. For the gateway cards and farmyard cards, select one deck of each, respectively, to use in the game. Each card has a 3-digit number printed in the lower left-hand corner. The first number of each card indicates what deck it belongs to in each case. Gateway cards are decks 0 through 3, and farmyard cards are decks 4 through 7. We recommend starting with the gateway cards numbered 001 through 30, which is the beginner deck, and the hops deck number 401 through 435 for your first game. After selecting your decks, place gateway cards face down in the upper left corner of the board. The farmyard cards will go face down upper right corner. The bonus and point card decks should be shuffled separately, and then the bonus cards get placed in the lower left corner face down, and the point cards go face down in the lower right corner. If you are playing the game with 1 to 3 players, shuffle the quadrant cards and place them face down next to the board. You don't need these in a 4-player game. The next step is also combined with phase 1 of round 1. You are already playing the game in some ways. The next step of setup will be very different depending on your player count. The wording can be slightly weird in the rulebook if you aren't used to this sort of thing. If you are playing a 4-player game, do not place any workers or cubes on the board right now. If you are playing a 1 to 3-player game, draw the first quadrant card. You will use this to keep quadrants open based on your player count. Place workers on every quadrant not listed on the card. Don't forget to place workers next to each of the decks, too. In this case, since I am setting up for and playing a single-player game, I look at the top quadrant card, and it says 2. I will not place workers on quadrant 2, and I will place them on every other quadrant. If I was playing a 2-player game, I would not place them on quadrants 1 and 4. If I was playing a 3-player game, I would not place them on quadrants 1, 3, and 4. In the future, when I draw a quadrant card, it will be used in phase 1 of each round to remove workers and free spaces on the quadrants shown. Quadrant cards are a clearing action in this way. In the general supply, place the fields, goods, sheep, and tools. The remaining workers should also start in this general supply. Now set up your personal play area. Each player needs a field board, a community center board, stable board, jewel box tile, and overview tile. It doesn't matter how you set it up, but you will be using the field board the most. Additionally, your community center needs to be able to slide. Place your community center tile over your community center board. Place the craft buildings immediately to the right. Place the craft buildings immediately to the right of the community center tile with one on each row. The order of craft buildings does not matter, but there is a recommended setup from top to bottom of carpentry, brew house, cooling house, bakehouse, and manufacture. In each row of craft buildings, place 2 boulders. Leave one space and then place the first boulder, skip another space, and then place the next boulder. Take 3 fields from the general supply and place them on the marked spaces of your field board here, here, and here. Take 1 barley, 1 flax, and 1 rye token each from the general supply and put them on the 1 space of your field board. Draw 6 farmyard cards from the deck on the action board. Don't look at these. Place them face down on the 6 spaces of your stable board, 1 in each space. Take a jewelry token and place it on the 0 space of your jewel box tile. Draw 4 gateway cards and 1 point card from the respective decks on the action board, and take them into your hand. In a multiplayer game, determine the first player however you would like and give them the first player token. Yes, the game does come with 4 printed first player tokens, but you only need 1 per game. Now you're set up to play the game. Let's take a look at the course of play in a round. Every game will be played over 6 rounds. Each round is comprised of 10 phases. We have already done phase 1 of round 1, so we are 1.6 repeating percentage points done with the game. Phase 1 of each round is remove workers. In a 4-player game, you will remove all workers from the topmost filled space on every action space on the entire board. In a 1 to 3-player game, you will remove workers as shown on the quadrant card for the round. Remove only the topmost row of workers from the shown quadrants relevant to your player count, and then discard the card from the game. If there is ever a question mark, use a random method to determine which quadrant you will remove workers from in the game. Removed workers will always return to the general supply. Phase 2 is all about those new workers. Each player will move the Farmyard card on the current round space of the stable board to the side, keeping it face down. The stable spaces all have a reminder of what round you are in at the top of each space. If the Farmyard card you just moved contains any sheep, return those sheep to the supply. Finally, take a look at the window of your current community center. Take a number of workers from the general supply equals the number shown in this window. Store them on top of the Farmyard card for the round. This is your supply of workers for this round. Phase 3 will be skipped in round 1 because it is the income phase. However, in future rounds, you will activate the bottom part of each bonus card you have in play. You can do this in any order you choose. You gain the actions or resources depicted. Bonus cards in hand confer no benefit. Bonus cards must be in play in order to give benefits. However, you could use resources you just acquired to play additional bonus cards during this phase and subsequently have access to the bonuses in the same round. The rules on page 23 and 24 have a breakdown of any bonus cards you may have a question about. This brings us to phase 4, actions. Turn order will happen clockwise in this phase, beginning with the first player. On your turn, either place worker or exchange workers. If you place workers, you choose an action space on the board, place workers according to the lowest cost, shown 1, 2, or 3, and immediately gain the benefit. These workers always come from the Farmyard card and then go into the action space you choose. You must have enough workers to gain the action you chose. If a space has an arrow pointing down, you must first pay the cost before you can get the benefit. If a space has a slash or the word "or" on it, you must choose which of the benefits you will receive. You don't get both. If you exchange workers for tools instead of taking an action on the board, you return workers to the general supply, and in exchange you get an equal number of tool tokens. You can choose to use this as a stall action, returning only 1 worker per turn, but this rarely, if ever, makes sense in the game. Before we go to the next phase, let's talk about the sow action shown on the 4 inner spaces of the action board. When you sow, you can move one of your 4 crops that you have at least 1 of in your supply to an empty field. The row of the field indicates how many of that crop you will reap during harvest. Tokens in your supply indicator are just that, an indicator, so you could reorganize with 2 tokens if you had 1 token on the 2 space, and place 1 from the supply on the field you intend to plant, and then move the one you had into the 1 space of your indicator. Tokens are just keeping track of count and are not limited in the game. An additional action space that provides an action you may care about is the life-sustaining action provided on the sheep shearing and the small trade spaces. This allows you to move exactly 1 sheep 1 space forward on your Farmyard board in order to keep it from dying of natural causes at the beginning of a future phase 2. If you ever move a sheep in this way from a space 6, it will go into your stables. Don't forget, all actions are optional. You may skip any or all of them. It is allowed to place workers on a space and never use any of the actions shown there. You may not pass on the action phase until you used all your workers on an action space or exchanged them for tools. Phase 5 now arrives. Add the Farmyard card that was previously holding your workers to your hand. You may choose to play immediately if possible. Phase 6 involves your fields and is called the Fallow fields phase. Slide all empty fields 1 row up if possible. This makes them more efficient on future turns. Afterwards, slide exactly 1 empty field up 1 more time if possible. Sliding fields in this manner is mandatory. You may not want to because of some cards you have, but you have to do it. If you have fields available to slide, you may not choose a field that is already in row 5. Now you are ready to harvest your fields in phase 7. Each player that has planted fields will harvest them by doing 2 things. First, move the planted good from the field to the left side of the board into the supply space of the same row. Then you must move the field you just harvested 1 row down. Do these steps 1 field at a time so you don't miss any fields. Note that the bottom row of fields is the 2 space for production. There is a 1 space for supply, but not for production. Phase 8, all players receive 1 milk for each sheep on their stable board, regardless of whether the sheep are on the cards or in open stables. You do not lose sheep for milking them because, well, that would be weird to butcher a sheep while you were milking it. In phase 9, you will spend goods to advance the craft buildings on your community center board. You can choose to play this phase simultaneously, or if any player would like to go in turn order clockwise, you may choose to do that instead. If you do turn order, every player will use a single turn to advance as many craft buildings as they can and wish. To advance a craft building, you move it 1 space to the right, paying either 1 jewelry or a combination of goods. For each advancement, the total number of goods will be equal to the current round. The required types of possible goods are printed on each building tile. The composition may be constrained by a particular type of building, but you do not have to pay all required types as long as you observe any constraints. The constraints only refer to what you pay, not what is in your supply. You can advance a building as many times as you can pay it, as long as there aren't any boulders in the way. Additionally, after advancing a craft building, always check whether the community center tile can move to the right. This is the case when all craft buildings are at least 1 space away from it. Community center tile will always stick to the furthest left craft building. You may also need some tools to deal with boulders. Each boulder may be moved 1 space to the right for each tool you have. Tools are not spent, except in the 6th round when they break and you return them to the general supply after using them. The first movement of a craft building does not require you to deal with boulders. The first movement of any boulder will cause you to exhaust 1 tool. The second movement in the same turn would require 2 more tools because you now have 2 boulders to move to the right. Starting in the 3rd round, some buildings will also have a discount. There is a reminder of these discounts on your stable board. The cost of advancement is reduced by 1 good if you pay at least 2 different types of goods for it. The cooling house, bakehouse, and manufacturer can be discounted in this way from round 3 on. The carpentry and brewhouse only received this benefit in round 4 due to their constraints. The cost of advancement is reduced by 2 goods if you pay 3 different types. This will only apply to the bakehouse and manufacturer during rounds 5 and 6 because they are the only buildings that require 3 goods. This means the bakehouse and manufacturer are the most efficient in rounds 3 and 5. Similarly, the cooling house is most efficient in round 3. The carpentry and brewhouse are most efficient in round 4, when you pay 2 of main good and 1 of your secondary good. Phase 10 only happens in rounds 1 through 5. Reset your boulders so that there are 2 and 4 spaces to the right of each respective craft building, similar to the initial setup. It is possible you may have moved a craft building to the left because of an action space. In this case, move the boulders so that they are spaced appropriately to the related building. After all players finish moving their boulders, the round ends and players proceed with the next round. At the end of Phase 9 progress in round 6, players will proceed to game end and scoring. There are also some anytime actions we will remind you of before taking a look at the end of the game. First, you can reorganize your goods on your supply indicator at any point during the game, even if it is another player's turn. Use as many of a good as you need to in order to prepare for whatever you need to do. Just make sure this reorganization does not result in a new total of goods. Second, you can play cards from hand at literally any time in the game. Unless you play in the midst of an action, immediately resolve the card. If you are in the midst of an action, resolve the action, then the card. You can play multiple cards at a time. Just resolve them one at a time in the order you choose. On cards, books indicate a condition. Dark books show that a specific situation on the action board must exist. In this case, it doesn't matter whether you contributed to the condition or not. An arrow indicates cost. These cards require you to pay something. The required goods must come from your personal supply and not from goods in fields. You must pay the exact amount. After paying this cost, immediately resolve the bottom of the card. Note that bonus cards do not give an immediate benefit and instead give a recurring effect that activates in Phase 3 of income. All effects of cards are optional. When you see a slash on a card, generally read it as an or. With cards that show a slash on the book and then a slash on the effect, read it as if you have the first requirement, you may gain the first benefit. If you meet the second requirement, you may gain either the first or the second benefit. If you have the third requirement, you may gain the first or the second or the third benefit. You do not get all the benefits if you meet all requirements on these types of cards. Some cards may also have a phase restriction. This will either be a single number, which indicates which phase it can be played in, or a bar with a number removed, which indicates the card can be played in any phase except the phase which has been eliminated from the phase bar. There's a great explanation of every card in the game at the back of the rulebook ordered by card number. As a reminder of the 4 types of cards, gateway cards will have a condition at the top which is normally easy to accomplish. Farmyard cards have a low cost and you will receive 6 of these total from phase 5 of the game. Bonus cards usually have a cost. When played, they provide income during phase 3. You can get bonus cards from gateway and farmyard cards as part of their effect. Point cards have a high cost or challenging condition. They are designed to be in-game cards providing victory points. You start the game with one of these in order to have a goal. At the end of round 6, players will end the game and receive a final chance to play as many cards from their hand as they can and wish. After playing any cards, players will score points in 5 categories. First, look at your community board. If you move your community center far enough, you will see victory points in the window, either 18, 34, 50, or 70 victory points. Otherwise, it is worth 0. Add 3 victory points to the number you scored for each craft building with the 3 victory point symbol to the left. Next, sheep in your stables are worth 1 victory point each. Jewelry is the 3rd category. Count up each jewel in your box and score 1 point for each one. As a reminder, jewelry is generally going to be worth less than advancing your craft buildings in phase 9 at the last round. Look at all your fields, goods, and tools. Total up the goods and tools. Add the number of each row each of your fields is in. Whatever this total is, goods, tools, plus a row of each field, divide this number by 5. You get 1 victory point for each whole number rounded down from this total. Finally, look at the total victory points from any bonus and any point cards you're able to play in the game. Add all 5 categories: community centers, sheep, jewelry, total of goods, tools, and rows, and card points, and you have your final score. The player with the highest points wins. In the case of a tie, whoever had the highest remainder in total goods, tools, rows category wins. If you're still tied, celebrate the beauty of the Hallertau region of Bavaria together. In the solo game, your goal is to score at least 100 victory points. Scores over 110 points are extraordinary. You've just learned how to play Hallertau by Uwe Rosenberg. Good luck with your hops, planting and rotating those fields, and crafting your Bavarian goods. Don't forget to grab that clay in the first round so you can advance the carpentry building during the first progress phase. It's also a good idea to get as many gateway and farmyard cards as you can early on, and never underestimate the importance of taking tools with the right worker exchange. Let us know what you think of the game overall, or tell us about your favorite Rosenberg gaming experience in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, we would appreciate you clicking that bell. As always, thanks for watching and happy gaming.